Hello everybody and welcome back to Screen Stars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2019 horror film Sea Fever, a film that is written and directed by Nisa Hardiman, and it stars Connie Nielsen, Hermione Caulfield, Dougray Scott, Jack Hickey and Arlen Esmale. Now this is a film that focuses on the crew of an Irish trawler that essentially sets out, and they have a guest on this next trip, and it is Hermione Caulfield's character, who is essentially a scientist, and she has hitched a ride with them to do some tests on their catch and things like that. Now while they are out at sea, there is some kind of life form that attaches itself to their boat, their trawler. Eventually it releases them, however it may have infected their water supply with some kind of parasite that is highly contagious between the crew members, and it is up to the crew and especially this scientist to try and figure out what's going on and try and keep everybody alive. Basic premise that we're getting here with this story, it's the kind of thing that we've seen many times before in many different settings, in space, wherever you want to imagine where you might have seen this storyline before. So what are my thoughts on Sea Fever? Well, this is a film I've actually quite been looking forward to. I thought the trailer looked great. It's one of those horror films that we can kind of all get behind. It feels very familiar, and if it kind of delivers in certain areas, generally speaking, they're quite reliable and entertaining films to watch, and for the most part this film does deliver. I did find it entertaining. I thought it was extremely well made. It looked beautiful for the most part, and the performances by everybody here, they've got some veteran actors on display here like Connie Nielsen, Dougray Scott, all deliver in that department. So it's top quality stuff that we're getting here with this film. There's a couple of little plot holes here and there that I kind of struggled with. The fact that, it seemed awfully coincidental that they would have this scientist on board when they run into this unknown underwater life form that this experienced crew that have been out to sea hundreds and hundreds of times. And yes, they do kind of go off course in this film, which it is explained, but this is like an unknown life form, and they happen to have a scientist on board. It just seemed a little bit convenient to me, and it was a little bit too dark and too moody for me, and for the most part it's full of charmless characters that you just struggle to like. They're not very likable, any of these characters. Even Hermione Caulfield's character, this scientist, I mean, she's given this character trait of just not being very sociable, which we see right at the beginning of the film, when she's not joining in at the office party sort of thing. She obviously doesn't really like people that much, so that doesn't make for a particularly engaging character to watch here. And the rest of them, they're all like veteran sea dogs on this ship, not very social people for the most part either. So it kind of leaves you with this cast of characters that you don't particularly warm to. I certainly didn't anyway. It's quite dark here and there in regards to how it's filmed, but you're on a ship, there's some underwater scenes here and there, and you don't see an awful lot either in regards to this unidentified underwater life form, if you like. You only see bits and pieces. They don't really expand on much of it, and it's got a very the John Carpenter film The Thing relies heavily on that in regards to the themes it's setting, like anybody could be infected, and doing this test of trying to figure out who's infected and who isn't. So there's a lack of distrust here and there, so it has a little bit of the John Carpenter Thing vibe going on here and there, which is never a bad thing in my opinion. And it's alright. Yes, it's a pretty grim film. It's not particularly light-hearted. With films like this, I I like them a bit cheesy. I really like Deep Star 6 and things like that, and I don't always like them to take themselves too seriously, these films, and we've had 2 this year now, water themed horror films. We've had Underwater and this, and they're both decent films, and they're both good films, and nice and well made films, but they're a little bit, I don't know, dark and moody, and both of them full of fairly charmless characters and dislikable characters for the most part. So therefore they're not that much fun to watch, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. But it's alright. It's certainly watchable. The effects are pretty decent. There's a couple of scares and shocks here and there, but it's not full on horror. It feels more like if BBC made a horror film. It's a bit, it's got that BBC look about it, it's really, I don't know, a serious look about it, and it didn't exactly float my boat, but I do recognise it was a well-made film with good performances and a decent idea that was fairly successful, and I was certainly entertained watching it, and I was certainly gripped pretty much throughout, but there were too many things about it that just didn't make it particularly fun for me. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. It's certainly worth checking out if you like sea-based horror films, horror films based at sea, and this is a particularly well made one, so it's worth checking out, certainly. So that's my review for Sea Fever. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching, and of course I'll see you back here for more reviews on Screen Stars.